I want to welcome everyone to the Danville City Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, May the 30th, 2024. It's 8:35, and we're here for a special call meeting and dealing with the 24-25 budget. So turn the meeting over to staff.
Mayor, before we get started, could I just say, I just think we need to scrap it and start over.
Well, good morning, Commissioner Cottle.
What is today? Yeah, that wouldn't be a fun exercise. Well, first, we appreciate everybody coming today. I don't really want to spend a lot of time presenting something. I want to make sure that we, as a group, have a chance to look at the spreadsheets that we printed. Probably what we'll come back to is this biggest sheet that I printed, but let's go through the slide real quick for the summary. And I'll let Lee, do you want to talk about that?
Okay. Good morning. So we have, we've included just one slide, one summary of the general fund, which is the fund that has the most moving pieces and supports the other funds. We've tried to make sure that we've included most, if not all, of the priorities that you all have communicated to us, and keep the budget as balanced as we as possible. And so this is it in a nutshell. General fund revenues, we have estimated and projected at $22,382,746. Your total expenditures for the general fund, which does include capital, at $24,021,766. So you get a total fund balance spend down, which is you're getting closer from your fund balance to your target of $1.6 million. So this does include your payroll adjustments for staff, which is your COLA of 3.4% for everybody, plus that market or that experience step in the scale. That includes your rehiring of those deferred police and fire pension that we talked about at our last meeting. It includes your adjustments to other staff changes, which is your senior tele position, your park and rec coordinator, your utility clerk adjustments, and your police sergeant adjustment. It also includes some adjustments to community agencies, which includes an initiative for your capital to the senior center when and if that occurs, and a homelessness initiative that for your all's consideration and approval when and if a really great proposal crosses that we can really get behind. We've also included an additional $75,000 for economic development, not specifically for a operational entity, but for a proposal of a specific project that is considered beneficial to the city. And we have included the fiscal year 25 capital request, barring a couple small adjustments that we did to fit all this in to defer a couple things to next year, small things beyond that. So we've included in your packet the full budget. Earl has a spreadsheet, the large page of just the summary of the general fund with some analysis in those first two columns. And then again, a copy of the capital that for fiscal year 25 that's included with the potential bond issuance projects highlighted separately to note that those are not included, but those can be added on later when we have a clearer picture of how much those projects will cost and particularly how we will pay for them, such as debt service or if a grant comes open or the like. So that's kind of it in a nutshell of what we wanted to cover. Really quick, because we've talked a lot about most, if not all, pieces of the budget. What questions do you guys have this morning?
I have a question. So, and some of these might be from last week when the meeting changed, so I apologize if that's the case. So 1 police, 1 fire rehire,
2 police, 1 fire rehire.
they were both the rehires?
Those were the deferred positions from the compensation adjustment this year. And then, so we would bring both of those, or all 3 of those positions back. And then the police had requested a adjustment to a sergeant or to a captain. Sergeant, that is included as well, to help with the administrative things that have fallen into their plate.
Okay, and I might be the only one. I thought we were going to try to figure out another police add-on and another fire add-on and possibly look at one of 2 things, lowering the fund balance or adding a small health insurance tax. Which
Okay.
that's a group decision, but I
mean,
thought we were
agree on
adding
the-
more.
I agree on the firefighter, we had asked for 2. I still would like to have 2. I mean, you know, the police, we've gotten 2, and the sergeant are back in, but I think it's important.
Okay, so as a baseline, we feel like that you've gone about as far as you can projecting revenue next year. I think you've maxed that out. As far as the fund balance goes, when you roll in capital, on sheet 14, at the bottom, you'll see how the capital allocation, once it's rolled in, we did that, the fund balance is basically at your fund balance target of 25%. And including above that, Commissioner Holland, you had asked and talked about the funding of the economic development work. On page 13, just above that, you'll see that $75,000 for the economic development initiative in line 7921, about midway up the page. So you'll have the EDC directly towards operation is 150, then we reserved another $75,000 for them for program development or project development as that comes forward. That was one of the questions you had asked me. Then
Right,
Commissioner
right.
Sears sent me some new other community agency numbers yesterday. That pulled out of the average of community agencies, like maybe another $3,000 across the board, because he reduced some of his quite a bit. And so, given the revenue projection, then the expenses, we've included everything in there, we've included the capital. So the reality is you really don't have the money necessarily projected to add additional people unless, so what we had talked about, what we had suggested is getting to December, because we know we want to hire a firefighter in August, that's going to be a process. You're going to have to add a police officer this fall. And then once those 2 are onboarded, we'll move towards a second police officer, getting that position back. And then that would be a trainee. As December got here, what we talked about last week was let's assess our revenue projections then. If they are coming in on target or over target, then we could amend the budget to add those 2 positions if you wanted to then. If you don't want to wait till December, if you want to make that decision immediately, then we probably will have to do something to address revenue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What does a firefighter position cost? What's an
If you
annual
get a
cost?
certified, it's about $124,000. If you get a trainee, it's $101,000. Total cost impact. And so what, the insurance premium for health insurance that is currently 0, against the industry standard, if you go to 2% on that, you're gonna generate about $250,000 from memory.
But we've missed the deadline on that, so
So-
we would not collect anything till minimally September of 2026.
Yes. So you would have to lower your fund balance with the idea that that's rolling into operate. So, but at the same time, I'm not really sure that we would recommend lowering the fund balance necessarily today, given the fact that we're on a balanced budget. We've kind of taken the conservative nature out of your revenue. We've kind of zeroed that out. So, we would suggest making that decision in December unless assessing what the revenue is. So remember, we started talking about revenue last year about December. So we continuously looking at that as an option. And if our revenue is coming in strong by the second quarter, then consider adding that expense to the budget. And also, our expenses so our expenses right now are still tied to the current expense chart, which is if inflation kind of tapers off or is managed, maybe the expenses are coming in sufficiently that you can hire them also without doing a budget amendment. So by the time we get through the first hiring process, let's look at it. We would suggest to look at it in December, but staff will do whatever y'all say. I mean, we just feel like that we can't remove any more conservativeness in our recommendation to you related to revenue.
So on the expense side, it's not going to get us there, but we have 40,000 for the homeless initiative, and we still don't really know what that is.
Correct. So the way we categorize that, there is a discussion about hiring a case manager somewhere. So if you're going to hire an employee, where's that housed and how's that sustainable? So you can't necessarily, the city and county can't pull from our general funds to fund everything.
Right.
Really our property tax structure isn't set up to manage that, and occupational taxes aren't really set up to manage that. So if you're gonna do a case manager, we've got to identify one of the, and I know it's not been broadly discussed, but just embedding that in the health department, they have their own tax, they're funded with their own tax rate. You get county and city buy-in by the city endorsing their board's change to that tax rate sufficient to fund a case manager long-term. But if that's the path you go down, then we'll come back to you and we'll say, this is what they want to do with this $40,000, is this okay? And so that will be a discussion we'll continue to have with the health department, with the task force that the county's got engaged. But you do have that $40,000 you can throw at that issue at the time that solution is identified.
Yeah, and you got my cuts in there, right, Ashley? When I
From-
made additional cuts? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always try to cut first, but if my colleagues want to talk later about the health insurance tax at a small amount, like specific to just fire and police down the road, I'd like to do that and definitely reassess the fund balance. Because I know priority for the citizens was to add another police and another fire for
Yeah.
sure.
Saying that, it may be that we can have that discussion, since we know that no matter what you do right now, which is why we were talking about it in December of last year, right? So maybe we'll just come back to it, and maybe you can come back to that discussion once we get that first and second quarter data starting to trickle in. Maybe we can open up the conversation again as staff in late November and that December meeting again, and talk about that health insurance tax rate or the expenses and revenues with those positions. I really think that's a good fall discussion, because it's going to take us some time to hire the ones we have. If you do fund it right now, we won't necessarily hire both of them right now.
let's make sure we're on the same page in this
Okay.
discussion. The budget you propose right now has rehiring 2 police and 1 fire.
Yes.
And then I think the discussion here is still about 2 police and 2 fire, or is it 3 police and 2 fire? Where's the discussion right now?
I think-
I'm at 2 and 2.
2 and 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the discussion is for 2 and 2?
2 and 2 new,
Yeah.
above and beyond what we have authorized.
Yes.
No. Not, it'd be the same 2 for police and just 1 additional for fire,
One
right?
additional fire.
1 fire.
Yeah, okay,
I
yeah,
apologize.
not, we all on the same page?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Because I was getting like, oh, what are
So,
you talking
so
about?
so you're strictly just trying to, I thought you were trying to add, overhire one of the police too. Okay, so if you're,
No, I think the
So that
discussion-
we're clear.
Now,
Not right
anyway.
now.
yeah.
Yeah, the discussion right now really is in, looking at your budget, it's just 1 additional firefighter.
Yeah.
Is that where you all are?
So,
That'll be, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good.
so that's probably closer to the end of the first quarter. So that, we can have that discussion in November after we see kind of that first quarter's revenue coming in, that first quarter of expenses getting started. Maybe by then, we will have hoped to have added the first firefighter. That's just an easy thing to add mid-year if you want to. Once you, to me, but go
I
ahead.
just don't want, I just don't want it to get lost, you know,
Yes,
because
yeah.
the years just tick by. We
Yeah, it
forget,
does.
oh, we need to go back. And then if we have a person that comes and we can't hire them, then we're sort of, we've tied ourselves up. Me personally, like the homeless initiative, I don't, you know, you're talking $100,000, and I know there's different pots of money, but that's $40,000. And that could be allocated to the staff. And I understand the homeless initiative, but is it ready? Are we ready for that? And that money could just sit there all year, and we could still be wanting to.
So that's a good
Done
point.
position.
That's a great point. So the things that are not planned yet, the programs that have money set aside,
Right.
like the homeless initiative,
Right.
would you prefer to amend the budget on those things if those ideas come forward and they need funded?
Yes.
Right? So like, so in other words, switching that money into fire personnel and immediately, right? So then you would know that you're adding that second firefighter now. So then you're rehiring all the 2 police, you're rehiring the 1 fire, and you're adding another fire. But understanding that those initiatives are not necessarily programmed in, so that when the good ideas come forward and we have an identified program that everybody can rally behind, then you can figure out how to pay for those.
It's sort of like a grant. The other night, we approved grants, and there's a $600,000 match. You know, and we didn't even bat an eye to say, oh, well, let's go for it, and that's great. We do want those grants, but it's also money.
It is,
You know.
it is.
And I think Ms. Compton would caution us that as we move these monies around, think about one-time expenses versus recurring expenses. And
Well, yeah, that's absolutely, like, if you get a certified officer in, that's at the top of our pay scale, that's a different cost than a officer, a fresh recruit, right? You also have that, they are potentially a 30, 20-year expense that just increases year over year. So you do have to keep that in consideration. I think if that's the desire, then you all could identify some of the one-time expenses that we have, initiatives that we've built in, and back off those for budgetary purposes.
I do think that the budget survey that Melanie had, the police and fire were the highest ranked priorities from the citizens.
And also if we did the fund balance, and not fund balance, the reserve, and if we moved it a couple of percent down, that's the citizens' money anyway.
It is.
It's their money. They
And
put
they've
it
already
in there.
paid it.
And they've already paid it once, so we need to use it towards what they're requesting us to use it towards, if that makes sense. I know you can't use it or supposedly towards salaries, but capital, you could move some of the capital to put the fund, the money into the general fund for the police and fire,
Still, that's a little different than operational money. I mean,
But I'm saying if you took and paid.
So
for
our
someone to have a-
operations is really already so technically the way it is budgeted, your economic development initiatives are considered operational. That's just budgetarily how they're considered. So right now, we're slightly in the hole for operations. So the additional police and fire, like your current year revenues, are not going to fully support the current year expenses projected, right? Like, when I've looked at year over year, historically, we end up, it nets or it's slightly in our favor for operations. But budgetarily, right now, for our projection, you are slightly in the hole on your operations. So, you're.
because the homeless,
Yes.
because of that economic development number, we added that out of the funding reserve. It adds it on the operation side.
Yeah, that's just categorically how they're.
The fund balance money, the auditors will question that now. Like, we can't take the reserve down to fund a position.
I'm not saying to do that, but
I'm trying to figure out, it's helping me try to
Yeah,
figure
yeah,
something
I
out,
understand,
right? So if we pull that revenue, if we pull the reserve number down, I don't know, it is not easy for me to identify eligible expenses on the operating side that are left that you could legitimately fund with the reserve by lowering the fund balance. Now, the fund balance with this budget is zeroed out at the fund balance target of 25%. That's where it's at. So you don't have any money necessarily left above that fund balance target. When we go through and I just want to verbalize this for you again, we're going to do what you say, but I'm trying to repeat information, right? As the cities around us, the GFOA, the recommendation is 2 to 3 months of expenses. The problem for us is beginning in July 1st, our money, our first payment doesn't come in for 3 full months. So 3 full months is 25%, right? So there's a case to be made that we don't need to pull that target below that 25% number. When we talk to other cities, the very, very few have numbers of fund balance targets below that 20% number. Owensboro, I think, or one of them has like 17, 18%. But then they also have additional money somewhere else that probably, when washed out, probably are closer to 30%, truthfully. The city, typically what you're seeing is somewhere between 20 and 25%. So I just want to make sure that we make that decision with our eyes open. If you try to deal with that fund balance target, you're accomplishing your policy objective of 25% with this budget.
It's really a cash flow question.
And then it's about cash flow.
Right, if you guys remember bill lists each month, typically one will be 1.5 to 1.8 million. The secondary one's usually a lot smaller, anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000. So you're looking at $2 million on average in a month that we are sending out the door. Well, taking out your water, which is a separate fund and separate purpose and separate use, right? On average, when our largest source of income from the county, which is our occupational taxes that they collect, some months, like last month, our payment from them was 1.6 million. So that's allocated over a couple of your different accounts, right? But the month before that, it was like 250,000. So depending on the quarters, right, payroll taxes are paid quarterly, net profits are paid annually. Those cycles those dips are big. So your fund balance is geared toward protecting against that. And then if there's any kind of recession or pullback in the economy, to give yourself the ability to pay expenses for operations while that revenue recovers. So that's your main consideration when you think about what I'm comfortable changing my fund balance to.
Well, let me make this statement here. You have an operating revenue of 22.3. You have a operating expenditure of 24 point whatever. But in order to make those two balance, you're spending 1.6 out of our fund balance with this proposal. But in doing that, you're still maintaining the 25%.
Yes, we are
Okay.
at the 25%.
So if the commission decided to go to 23%, 22%, it would generate $500,000, for example. But I'd be concerned about it because it's a one-time drawdown. And so if we look at doing some one-time expenditures with it, I'd be okay. But if you're gonna do some expenditures that are repeating, then I think that's where you all would caution us. And you said you'll do anything we ask you to do. Well, you won't, because we ask you to do something that's illegal. If we ask you to do something, take that fund balance down below 25%, you're gonna strongly object to that, right?
No, no,
Below
I'm,
20% then, how about 20%? Yeah.
giving you my opinion is not necessarily objecting to it either. Like, you know, I wanna, my job partly too is to be the devil's advocate.
Yes.
Right? So I want to argue with you a little bit to challenge what your thought is.
Yeah.
That's okay. That doesn't bother me in the least.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I think that in listening, I do think though, if you want to reallocate those monies set aside for a couple of those programs, I think you could proceed knowing that you're gonna hire a firefighter after you get the first one in the academy. Probably you would start that process in October. By the time you get to that, you're gonna end up with about half the year of expenses for that. So I think if you reallocated some of your programmatic things that folks are asking for, like the homeless initiative, if you address, I think you could go ahead and budget and say that you could hire that position. You just wouldn't do it in August. You would bring them on kind of in that December area. But you would know you could do that probably. We could probably get to that one for sure. Yeah, and then if proper ideas that you all can rally behind tied to whatever initiative arise, then you would have to figure out how you want to fund those. But I do suggest, no matter what happens, we want to bring, as we've done for 3 years now, we want to bring revenue discussion back to you in the fall anyway. We want to look at all of our tax rates again and see what the market did. So for example, on those insurance tax rates, you know, those are generally about 5% the health insurance is about 5% across the board. Our rate is 0. We have to acknowledge that in terms of if we have a need. We are doing, we have $25,000 in the budget to fund the emergency medical director to help guide our emergency response, our EMTs and things like that for the fire department, which they've asked for a while, which I know that the county is anxious for the partnership on. You know, the medical dispatching, we need that medical director. So that's an expense. So that is a new cost, and that is definitely something that is tied to the overall health of the community. So there is a direct benefit to that health insurance premium tax that we are funding out of property taxes. Does that make sense?
Okay, so let me ask a couple of questions then, okay. If the commission seems to be very strong in voicing an opinion in support of the second firefighter. I think I feel that myself just sitting here, so do we need to have staff come back and show us what this looks like with the second firefighter included? Even though we know it's not gonna be a year-long expenditure. Then the second thing I think is that we keep tossing around about the health insurance. I call it a tax, is that right, the word for it? The health insurance
It
tax?
is.
And then, so we're at 0, so we're not doing any of that. So,
Correct.
you want staff to come back with a proposal to show you what revenue would be generated if you went with the health insurance tax at a 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever your thoughts are about that? Are those things you want to see before we, July the 1st?
Well, keep in mind that because of the timing of when that comes into play, that would not, you would not generate that new revenue until July of next, or till August of next year.
I understand that, but I think
Okay.
it's important they see
Yeah.
that, because they keep, well, I should say we keep tossing it out. And so it's important for us to see what it looks like, because I think if you show us what it looks like, and then show us about the first dollar will not be generated until, say, July the 1st of 2025, I think it gives us more decisions to make and clears things up. I want them to have I want us to have all the information that we can have to make this thing, when we
What
say
team are you
yes.
on, man?
What?
What team are you on?
Well, after studying all this stuff, this one commissioner was ready to make a motion to approve this 24-25 draft budget as presented. But I don't feel confident doing that, because I want you all to get all your questions answered.
And then
Don't-
also,
don't leave
I
without
appreciate
leaving-
it.
yeah.
I mean, and maybe you could also bring, I know you don't want to hear it, but the reserve, bring back those numbers also to show
Yeah,
us what that
yeah.
would be if we lowered it 1% or 2%.
It's about $200,000
Right,
every
but I mean,
percent.
you know,
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
had it and we can make a decision,
Yeah.
and then you can always change that. And in reality, the new positions in any of them, if you're, we pass the budget in July, all of us know they're not gonna use the salary for July or August probably in most of those positions, because you're not gonna get them hired. So
Well,
that's a
that-
savings
we-
on insurance and
We did
timing.
include that analysis last time. If you'll remember, go back to the slides we put in last year, or last meeting, the positions, we worked with the chiefs, and we do know that, for example, the trainee for the police isn't brought on till January. And so we don't have 12 months of expenses in here.
So
We
you
have
don't have
this.
that in the budget anyway?
What I'm saying, no, what I'm saying is we have the half year like we talked about last time. So we have the position funded, but we won't hire the position till January, because that's when we think that will actually be in line with the academy for the police, for example. So the certified police officer, we're gonna start that hiring process in July-ish, knowing that by the time you get through the process, it's gonna be October 1st. So we won't absorb an expense on that position until.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So that October 1st to July 1st is what we funded.
So you didn't fund July?
You didn't
June.
fund July and August
full
already.
year.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
But you have not funded
yeah,
the second firefighter. Anyways.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
The-
get
the-
I'm just trying to get everything out on the table, so that all the questions that we
Yeah.
are generating, every time we meet, we have different questions, so we need to get them on the table and.
There
get
is
them
no,
answered.
there is no money in the budget to bring on the second firefighter.
Yes, I understand.
We're on board with that, but we need some advice on what you all want to do. So, which is, Donna, what I was suggesting is that if we go ahead and get the first firefighter on board and then start the second process in October, then you're gonna have a mid-year hire. So you're gonna have 50% of the expenses. So if you hire a full-time firefighter, you're not gonna have $124,000, you're gonna have about $60,000. So we believe that if you take the $40,000 in the homeless initiative, that we can fund that in the fiscal year we're in, and that will put you in a position to, A, know what your revenue's doing by December, and B, then we can bring back the health insurance premium tax discussion in December, and so then you can look towards July, how you want to fund that, whether or not you want to raise the health insurance premium tax, or whether or not you can rely on your existing revenue stability to absorb the rest of that expense long-term. Does that make sense, kind of? That's difficult to explain, but it is all the numbers in front of you. There is no more slides that we can really create to explain that necessarily. It's about just let's talking through that like we are.
And the other thing I think needs to be addressed this morning is, community agencies. I think you've given us a new spreadsheet where the numbers have been modified, adjusted, and I think it'd be important to take a look at.
We can reprint that. We had
Yeah, we need to
a
reprint that if you-
new adjustment based on some requested changes
But the
by.
188,000 is,
So 188 includes $50,000 for the seniors one time. That's just budgetarily where it goes, is in that category. So that includes the $50,000 for the senior potential adjustment for capital. It also, so in total, without that $50,000, your baseline community agency allocation is $115,350. Your homelessness initiative is also included in there. What page am I on?
It's about
So right now, it is inflated from where you all would like to see it based on what we've just heard. If we remove, so in total, it's currently $228,350. That does include $50,000 for the senior center expansion and $40,000 for homelessness. So without the 40, you're right at, let me do some quick math. 188,350. And then baseline for operations that does not include the one-time capital for the senior center would be $138,350. Nope, just kidding.
yeah.
Yeah,
So community
Can,
agencies is
can you reprint that
138
sheet
something.
for
Yes.
them, please?
yes.
It's on page, what, 12 of this?
It's in the numbers beginning on page 12, and it goes all the way through 13. When you look down through there, and really you are accustomed to see it in the spreadsheet where you put your numbers, so I'm gonna have her reprint that sheet for you. But it's all in the very first column on that 12 and 13. For example, the family service, the senior citizen center on line 7178 is $73,000 there. The line directly below that is $50,000 towards their capital project, right? And as you go down through there, those represent the numbers that are in the spreadsheet that I'm having her reprint for you now, which is a different format, which you're probably more used to seeing.
I
But-
personally don't want to, I'm in favor of keeping the money in for the senior citizens' capital investment for sure, but about you guys.
That is strictly funded with the fund balance for that drawdown of the reserve. That is a capital, considered a capital investment in the same way that we did with the animal shelter and the same way we did with BCTC. So that number, although is in your budget, doesn't affect your operational metric of, the judgment. Is your operational budget balanced? Right now, theoretically it is, but when we're adding this number back, it doesn't look like it is. Because this is a capital expenditure. Just keep
gotcha.
that in mind.
But it's not our capital, so we can't classify it the exact same way,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't, but that's,
If for accounting purposes, we can't classify, it's not ours, so we don't get the benefit of it as being an quote-unquote asset. So
But we know it's not going to be a reoccurring
Yes.
expense. We know it's a one-time expense, so we're comfortable using it in that way. And then on page 13, towards the bottom, towards the bottom of that category, you see the homeless initiative to be approved is 40,000. If you pull that number out, based on what we're under the impression, that would be a reoccurring expense. So that's a number, if you want to reassign it to the fire salaries, then that would be the first step in getting that position.
that would be my preference, but again.
Mine too.
Okay.
And then, before everybody goes crazy, if they come up with a good idea for the homeless initiative, then, like you said, we'll take a look at it then. But the need for the firefighter immediately, to me, is more, I don't want to say important, but is a need we need to address sooner rather than later.
it aligns probably with the broader community expectation better in the short term,
Right.
yeah.
So I'll back that up with a number 3 here and pulling that, as we go through some of these things and we prioritize police and fire. And yesterday I went to the mental health symposium. We really are helping out the homeless by bolstering our police department because it keeps coming up.
It
How
does.
important that is.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And there's still money, you're still funding the agencies that are providing service to the homeless initiative. If you'll remember that first chart, you were back, 2 months ago, when it was more of the, Melanie did the chart, which I appreciated, but it demonstrated that you were already spending about $15,000 to $20,000 on homeless services, or those community agencies that provide services to those in either food insecurity or housing insecurity. You're already dedicating towards about or drug intervention. You're putting about $20,000 there already. So even with this budget, if you take that $40,000 away from the homeless initiative, you're still funding those agencies that are providing impact in that genre of need to the tune of about $20,000. And so this is after Commissioner Sears sent me some new numbers yesterday. And so the baseline on the right side reflects the averages and our interpretation of what you all are telling us with those agencies. And so right now, the numbers that are on the far right are the numbers in the line items on page 12 and 13.
So that's the light green, I guess you call it? green?
Yes, the light green. The exception of that is the Development Corporation. This is an operational number. We did include the other $75,000 as a separate line. So, saying it another way, last year, the allocation for all agencies was $72,175, which is your first column. Then this year, it's projected to be $65,350. So you've as collectively, as y'all sent me different numbers in over the last 10 days to 2 weeks, you all whittled that number, and I forget that, it seems like that number originally started with about an $80,000 number. And so you all whittled that down below to that 65 number, saving about $7,000 towards operations already. Now, the other agencies are just your baseline agencies. For example, the airport board, it's hard to underfund that. So if you're going to fund that program, you need to fund the entire program. And so, for example, on that one, there's 3 of you that voted, or it's not a vote. There's 3 of you that recommended that 52,406. So when there was a majority of you said the same thing, I programmed that on the right side. Okay, I just went to that number. So I ignored the average in that situation and went to that number because there was 3 of you that said the same number.
Earl, Donna pointed out to me that at some point I lost my mind, which is not news, but Pioneer Playhouse asked for 2, I allocated them 4 for some reason. Should be a 2.
Okay.
That's not gonna make a huge difference.
Well, it will affect the average. There's a majority of you are saying 2,000, so that wouldn't change our recommendation. But duly noted, I'll change the spreadsheet to reflect 2. I'm sure we won't tell them that, right? Like we won't tell them that you wanted to give them $4,000.
We'll just double
You can tell them I
everybody's
lost my mind.
request.
I'll do that.
They already know that, that's right, they're okay. Okay, well, I asked to have this pulled back up, because I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to see it one last time. And the question is, we're okay with where we are. Okay?
So if you were going to do a budget ordinance to say where you were at, the expenses with, really with adding the police officer, we would see a shifting of that. So the bottom line, if you were going to do an allocation ordinance at this point, you're doing your ordinance for about 24,021, and we will pull away from the homeless initiative and put that number in firefighter salaries, and we would say, and so that number right there probably is narrowing in on what our budget ordinance needs to look like. So we will make the change that you're asking for with the salary and homeless initiative. We will provide you also with the revenue discussion again, just for your file. It's the same memo that we put in the packet back in February. We'll print that again for you, just so you have it in front of you. But we will steer towards a draft budget. We will be prepared to do a budget first reading at the next meeting based on this number. But based on the fact that we're not funding the homeless initiative, that we are funding the firefighter position.
What? Oh, well, and I want to go on the record and say I'm supportive of the second firefighter, but I'm also very supportive of having that $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 earmarked someplace for the homelessness initiatives that are coming our way. And my rationale for that is that the community has really been talking more and more about homelessness, and in our community agencies, allocations, they're going down. And then, so we're doing really less, in my opinion, to direct actual monies at a homelessness initiative, not really knowing what it's gonna be. And I know we say police and fire and a whole lot of the other things that we do, they're addressing that, but they're not addressing the homelessness initiative directly, maybe I'll say it that way. So that's my soap opera, my sermon for the morning. Okay, but I'm okay.
I think it's a good comment, Mayor, and certainly we feel like what you just presented us is good. And that doesn't mean, like what you said before, we're going to revisit things in the fall after we see how things are going, that homelessness can come back into the picture and maybe we can find that money. But right now, our priorities are police and fire. So.
Okay.
Is that the general consensus with the other three? I mean, you all still have that same?
Yes.
I do.
Are you all comfortable with what I'm saying about the bringing an ordinance, our first reading, our budget ordinance, being prepared for that at the next meeting based on these numbers, based on the second firefighter hire?
I mean, I understand timing, and so I would prefer if we could fit in another meeting, just to see and just have it solid. But, I mean,
We could probably
It's
meet next Friday.
everybody else.
I don't know, if you all want to try to, that's the easiest thing to do. I know that we've got KLC on Thursday. So, and I've not looked at my own calendar, but if you would like to try to get another budget meeting next Friday, let's look at our calendars and decide. Okay, it is.
everybody else might be fine, that's,
Do you all,
I'm not gonna be at
Monday,
KLC next
Tuesday.
Friday, but
do you want to try to meet
not Friday.
Tuesday in the afternoon, like at 4?
say it again.
Sounds
now, what
okay,
now?
but I'll have to check.
The June 4th at 4 p.m. Could you all do that?
We can, but if anybody's going to KLC, they'll have to leave early. KLC is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I said Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
It's Wednesday, Thursday.
Wednesday,
That was my
Thursday.
confusion. It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Well, it's not Friday, it's Wednesday,
No,
Thursday.
it's Wednesday, Thursday.
Tuesday is ABC.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's why it's not on my calendars, because I'm not going to that one.
So we could do something.
Friday is open. Okay. So
We'd be highly understaffed Friday, though.
No,
I gotta go and do the wedding rehearsal and all that kind
oh,
of stuff.
yeah. Ashley won't
Oh.
love that, but we could meet
Ashley
Friday
Eve.
morning if you all want to meet Friday morning.
That's, yeah, that'd be fine with me.
You want to try to do
Keep it on
that
y'all's
and come back to the discussion? Okay.
Just to, yeah, get us, make sure we're all on the,
Same.
What time do y'all want to
Same
meet
square.
Friday morning? 8:30 or 9 or 8?
Try to accommodate Lee's schedule and be here at 7:30 in the morning.
I said 7.
You guys might wait on me on that one.
10:30.
Pick me up on the way in, Lee.
10:30 sounds great, Kevin.
Now, I gotta
Whatever
open,
y'all say.
so I'll need to leave at 9:30. We could
So let's
meet
do
8:30
8:30.
is perfect.
Yeah,
On
let's
the
do
7th?
8:30.
We're talking about the 7th or the 31st?
The 7th.
Oh, wait a second. I thought we were looking at May.
Today's.
He's about gone.
See, she had her oatmeal already. See, she didn't share it, see?
Sorry. I
It's
got
all right.
a
Take
new
your time.
calendar.
We don't have any place to go. Take your time. I've committed all day long, all morning long to this
Yeah.
meeting.
I'm flexible the 7th.
Ooh, okay.
What, you all can pick.
11:30?
No.
You know what my time is. My standing time is 11:30. So 8:30 on the 7th?
8:30 is good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay.
That's one battle I lose every time doing it.
Is it, what other information besides then? Okay, so if we're going to have a time for an entire another meeting, what else could we give you that is still confused or?
Now, the parks, all of that's a future meeting for bonding. I understand that. We're not just throwing that away. We just want to look at it
Correct.
later.
Yes.
And you had on here, on the Capitol, the police department is shared with the county. Is that just because of the bonding would be general fund, or? I don't
That might be
think they
just a
would share.
typo on my notes.
Maybe I did it. I
For the
messed it
police
up.
department,
Yeah, I had the same question, Donna.
that's
it'd be
that's
nice
just
if
a
they would
typo.
share.
I've copied and pasted. I wish they would, but they're probably gonna veto that one. That's just a copy and paste
Okay.
error.
Erase
So
that
it
from
would
the
just be bond issuance for the police department renovations.
But everything else is in on Capitol.
Everything on this sheet is in your budget.
Right.
If it's not highlighted blue.
And those are all more bonds.
Yes. And utility fund where it is rate-based rather than tax-based, despite the bond, those are all included because those get adjusted for your
Grants.
grants, like any debt issuance, your rate is adjusted down the road for that. So those are all included.
Can we do like a if-then sort of, if we do this, then this is what it looks like and sort of
With
the-
your, like your fund balance or
Right,
with
yeah, the couple
what it
of
would look
options.
like
Right.
with the debt issuance? Okay.
And then
I try not to touch reserve, but, I mean, we could put it in there just for argument's sake.
We're trying to get to a first draft, first,
First
First
reading
approval, first-
is your
yeah,
goal.
yeah.
You do have to
Well,
have a
we're getting
approved
closer.
budget by June 30th, or you are required to operate on the existing budget, which is not an ideal scenario.
We will get there if we have to meet every day
Oh,
the
yeah.
last week of June. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Every day?
No,
Sounds
we're-
like a plan?
I said the last week of June, last week of
We're
June.
pretty good right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I really, the changes you're talking about really want to affect your first reading, second reading. I mean, the management of some of those tax rates and things, because they're really, you're making, that decision will be next year ultimately. You know what I mean? Depending on when you make it. So you're steering towards being done with your budget at the first reading, at the first meeting in June anyway. Because it's not going to change very much, no matter what you do, unless you just add all the debt service for the Parks and Rec, then that's an issue. But,
Start saving these
Yeah.
trees,
Yeah.
we gotta do.
okay,
I appreciate everything y'all did and the fact you listened to us and have given us some options. I appreciate that very much.
Rick, any other questions? Jenny, Donna, Kevin, any other questions or comments?
I've said nice things about them, so I'm finished for the day.
I want to ask the gallery if they have any comments or questions, but I get in trouble, won't I? But, well, my thing is, these meetings have been good because we're trying to let everybody have as much input as they can have. And the benefit of today's meeting is that we're going to put the second firefighter back into the budget, and we've shifted a few other things around, so we're good. Staff, you have anything else for us? So the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I will second.
All right, no need for an executive session. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you all.